Welcome back to WagerTalk.com. We're going to take a look at fantasy sports. What? We're a sports betting show. Why are we going to talk about fantasy sports? Well, Brian, first off, a little pet peeve of mine. Fantasy sports is betting, okay? Let's just first of all get that out there. I know the government views it differently, but it's betting. And I have found now, and you're a bigger guy, well, not a bigger guy in that regard, but bigger guy in fantasy sports than I am. I just don't have the time to devote to fantasy sports. But it's a great tool for handicapping, and it mirrors more and more of what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. And I think the difference is, in the old days, fantasy sports was, season long, and I know that's still big, and you're in a lot of major fantasy leagues here in Vegas, and the daily sports have become very, very popular. And I think it's the daily leagues where you pick a new team every day, that truly is sports betting, because you're handicapping day-to-day matchups.
There's a lot of guys that bet for a living and are finding it hard to get bets in, not able to play offshore. So they're going to that. They're going into the day. If you've got a math model, you can go into this and you can probably make the money, because there's a lot of people that are just fans out there. And that's one of the reasons why we as sports bettors have an advantage, because we do this full time, going against a lot of guys that don't. I'm not a full-time fantasy guy because, like you, football season, I'm just overwhelmed. Just too many games. Basketball is just too many games. Baseball, there's 30 games.
Yep.
So 30 teams in baseball, so I have that ability to play fantasy baseball. And at least in my regard, it does help when you're handicapping the games, because especially from a starting pitcher standpoint, a lot of people handicap baseball based on starting pitchers. You know how your starting pitchers have done on your team if you're playing fantasy baseball. If you got Jordan Zimmerman, this guy is just pitching great lately, you know that that's a guy that you don't want to go against unless you have some overwhelming evidence on the other side. On the other hand, if you have Joey Votto, and Joey Votto's in a terrible slump, he's not hitting well, and he's the main guy for Cincinnati at this point, you know either to bet Cincinnati under, or to possibly, if you have the matchups go against Joey Votto. There's just many things you want to look at. The only thing is, and I even find myself looking at this, well, I will have a bet on the home team. My batter from the road team is coming up to bat. You've got this little thing going on in your head. Say, okay, do they have a big enough lead where I can let my batter get a home run or get a hit in this game? It makes it a little bit interesting when you're watching the games. But definitely, there's guys I know that don't bet for a living, that play the fantasy sports. They're excellent. And I tell them all the time, I said, you need to back this with money.
Absolutely. I've told this story many times on radio and podcast. My biggest pet peeve is sitting in a sports book and have a large wager on a game. And when you're in a sports book, every play, somebody's cheering, whichever side you got in there. And, somebody just scores a touchdown, and it's a touchdown that's now making you a loser against the point spread. So you're not happy, and the guy behind you is screaming and yelling, yeah, I got it. And I turn around, I go, you got so-and-so in the game? And, look, oh, no, I got that guy on my fantasy team. I want to just reach and just choke the living shit out of him, really, seriously.
There's money involved in that.
I know. I mean, it's like, I'm old school, Brian. You got a big wager on a game, and this guy's cheering because his guy just had a 7-yard touchdown catch, and it's going to get him in his fantasy league. That's just me. But on a simple, if you look at, let's say, the Super Bowl, the props, what are prop bets? Every player prop is nothing more than a daily fantasy bet. Right. You're putting a player in a lineup because you think he's going to either perform or take him out of the lineup because he's going to perform in the situation. And that's what we do with all of the player props in the Super Bowl.
It's handicapping just like anything else. And the reason why it's not considered gambling is because the sports leagues are into it. Baseball's into it. The NBA.
It's a game of skill.
Well, it should be a game of skill. They're calling it a game of luck. And there is skill. There's obviously skill involved. The same guys continue to. If you were to go to FanDuel or one of the other ones, the same guys that are making.
And we're looking for sponsors if you're listening.
FanDuel or anybody else will.
DraftKings, anybody.
Yeah, they're making a ton of money. But if you go into that, the same people are winning all the time because it's a skill. if people start off with $1,000 in their bankroll and there's no skill involved, eventually you're going to end up with roughly the same thing. So what you're looking for is skill, and people do this on a full-time basis. And who knows, if the betting climate continues to go like it is, maybe 10 years from now, Marco, we'll be betting daily fantasy.
There you go. All right. I hope this helps you that, you know, fantasy sports is okay. I know we've been taking some shots at it. We're only taking shots because it's legal and sports betting's not, other than, of course, in the state of Nevada. But use it to your advantage. Really, the similarities are there. What you're seeing with your fantasy, you can use in your sports betting, and that's the key message that we're trying to get across here. He's Bryan Leonard. I'm Marco D'Angelo. I hope you found this week's videos enlightening and entertaining, and best of all, help you make some money. We'll be back next week here at wagertalk.com.